This is Thank You Mama weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. My mom's family comes from a very magical tiny island in Croatia. It's a beautiful little island with no cars and no hotels. And I'm there every summer. And every day I walk past the doctor's office, which is situated in an old stone building in the center of the village. And every day I say hello to a tiny old lady dressed in black with a black scarf on her head and big glasses on her face. She's sitting on the green bench in front of the doctor's office because her apartment is on the top floor in that building. And she's feeding cats, or she's talking to whoever decided to sit next to her and have a little chat. Her name is Zdenka Gregov, and Zdenka is a poet. She was born on the island in 1927, and she married Ante Gregov, who was the local fisherman, but also a self-taught painter. And Ante's paintings are some of the most magical paintings I've ever seen, because Ante painted old stories and myths from the island. So the paintings are full of people flying and seers observing the world and devils jumping out of the trees and monsters rising from the ocean, and they're just incredible. So Zdenka took care of the household and of her two sons, and she kept writing poems about life and the island and about her childhood and the times past. I read her book of poems last fall and loved it. I loved her humor, and especially loved that she describes the island as it used to be, with so much feeling and joy and love. So in a way, she conserved this old Zlatin. I generally do not read poetry. I'm embarrassed to say this. And I know that reading poetry is a special muscle that needs to be developed, and then it needs to be some love and care. And I just do not do it. The only poetry I ever read is Mary Oliver, which I sometimes read to Kai because he loves nature. And Mary Oliver has this most beautiful poems about our connection to nature. So when I heard a few months ago that my friend Nida Sophrasarun published her first book of poetry, I was very excited, not only for Nida, but also because I was excited Nida's going to bring me back to poetry. And after the interview you're going to hear, I decided this is where I should stay, one poem at a time. When was the last time you read poetry? I hope that this beautiful conversation will inspire you to allow poetry to fill your life with some extra little magic. Hello and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Teider. My guest today is Nida Sophrasarun. Nida, a beautiful friend, and I'm so excited Nida is here. Nida holds degrees from Wesley College and Johns Hopkins Writing Seminars. What's very exciting and interesting about Nida is that she's lived and worked in Bulgaria, China, Hong Kong, Japan, Myanmar, and Taiwan. And even more exciting is that Nida's first poetry book just came out. When, Nida, just like 2 months ago?
That's right. April 3rd, It actually came out on my birthday.
Oh, that's a beautiful
Isn't that wild?
present. Was it planned or did it just accidentally
No,
happen?
my publisher said, "What do you think about April 3rd for your book release?" And I was like, that sounds good. That sounds like kind of perfect and fated.
Nida's poems appear in New England Review Prairie Schooner, 32 Poems, Wildness, and Elsewhere. And I am extremely excited. I met Nida 2 years ago
Yes.
At a friend's 50th birthday party. And we immediately, I think that was love at the first sight. And when Nida told me about her poems and writing poetry and her book coming out, this was a plan 2 years ago that when the book is out, Nida's going to come to thank you, Mama, and talk about her poetry and her mom and life lessons. And I'm very excited, Nida. This is it. You're here now.
Well, thank you so much, Anna. It's an honor, and I really appreciate all our conversations and the build up to this.
Yeah. And Nida, thank you for making me read poetry. I ordered the book and then I started reading it and I thought, oh my God, I am so confused. And I texted you, didn't I? I was like, Nida, I have to reread everything a few times and then go back a few days later. You are teaching me to read poetry, and I'm very, very grateful for that.
Well, I'm grateful for you to spending the time with it. 2 or 3 reads is not unusual, but it is unusual that you actually found that time to do that. And I know how precious that time is. So thank you very much. I mean, you're a mom too, and you have your own life and work.
I
So
I am, but you know what's amazing about poetry? What I'm now discovering is you're not scared of it like you are of a book where you're tired and you're like, oh, I'd like to read, but these full pages of things. And the
Mhm.
beautiful thing about poetry, which now I'm learning, is I have your book here next to my bed, and then
Oh,
sometimes when I'm just like, I don't want to read a lot, and then I grab the book, and you can spend a minute, 5 minutes, and
mhm.
feed your soul, and that's beautiful. This is why I want to encourage people to read poetry, and yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. I feel the same way when I read people's poetry, and I don't know, it's almost like a meditation for
Yes.
those few minutes, and then it sets you up for whatever you do next. And I don't know, it brings you into your body, into your, I don't know, both into your body, but also it silences things, but you are almost like you have better hearing afterwards.
Yes, yes, everything is brighter. You see
Mhm.
everything in different colors. Um, but a oh, now I had a question for you about poetry. Oh, but what I wanted to say is very important and interesting as well is
Mhm.
exactly coming back. I do not reread books. Like I can. It's interesting. I can rewatch a movie. I watch a movie and I forget it. Like I can
Mhm.
rewatch movies all the time. Once I read the book, it's very hard for me to go back because they stay so present with me. But what's beautiful with poetry is that you go back, and every single time you go back, you discover something new. These poems are just completely changing from day to day. It always feels new and fresh. That's
Oh my
fascinating.
gosh, that's really wonderful to hear. Because sometimes when I would write them, I would go back and think, well, sometimes when you write, you're in the moment and you're feeling yourself and you're like, this is amazing. But you put it down and after 3 days, you're like, this
I
is
know. What
insane.
was that?
Yeah, I was that was not the good move right there. But so sometimes in the process of when the book was accepted to when it was published, I would go back and read it. I'm like, is it gonna last? I
Mhm.
think when we write something, we want it to last. And I mean, that's sort of the narcissistic part of us, I guess. But I'm really happy to hear that you found different things every single time, and that it changes with, I think, your understanding of some moment or your own memory, your own past, or whatever image. I'm really grateful that you shared that with me because that feels good.
Nida, I'm just thinking, we didn't share the name of the book, which is
Oh, yes.
Novice.
Yes, novice.
And I will put a link in episode
Thank you.
notes. Yeah, definitely. So the listeners can find the book very easily. But tell me, how do you become a poet? What is your journey?
Oh my gosh. Well, I remember when I was in about fourth grade, my aunt took me to a bookstore and she said I could choose any book I wanted. And there was this gigantic book of Emily Dickinson poems. And I remember it had like a butterfly on it and a plant on it and lots of words that it seemed like I understood because they were nature words. And I picked that book. it seemed to be the best value for the gift that I was giving. So I was like, I'm going to make her spend a lot and then give me all these poems. But then I read the poems and I thought to myself, I understand most of these words, but why don't I understand the poem? Like the meaning was elusive. And also that seemed to be the point of it. And so I kept going back, and I go back to that every year. I mean, my copy is running out. I actually have it here. I'm looking at it. It's always on my desk. But I started to read it then and to kind of write. You know, we would have poetry exercises at school. And then I had a high school teacher who really encouraged me to write more poetry. And then in college, I had a really good teacher. He's actually quite an influential poet, Frank Bedart, who he's seminal in just the in the line of poetry, and he was really encouraging. And I applied right after college to a writing program, and that's where I met some of the same friends I have today. And what I didn't realize about that time was that it would be the only time for the next 25 years where I would be surrounded by that many writers, because it was so many poets and fiction writers and nonfiction writers, and even science writers. And I missed that. I didn't realize that having that community would have been so rare, for people to read your work, take it seriously, give you feedback that was constructive. And sometimes it was hard truths, but it was actually what you needed to hear at that time. So I didn't write very much in between graduating in 2000 until when my son was born. And then that was when I really needed a space for myself to be creative. And I would stay up, when he was sleeping, and I would stay up and start writing. And so, yeah, a lot of these poems mostly were written 13 years, or I guess when was it? Like, I guess now he's 12 years ago. And before that, it was really hard to find the motivation. Maybe I didn't have enough I know I didn't have enough life experience. I had not lived enough.
Yeah. It's beautiful that we are talking about moms here, and to learn that motherhood brought you back to your creative self.
Yeah.
And create this other baby.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
Your motherhood, it's interesting.
Yeah. Though my friend Jen says that this is way better than having a baby, because then you can eat sushi at the same time, because you're having I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, my other friend, Cecily, who's also a poet, she encouraged me all throughout those years that I wasn't writing very much, because it was sad. I felt like, why couldn't I make it happen? Like, what was happening? Why wasn't I writing? And she was always encouraging me to try to keep writing and submit. And if I hadn't at the point when this opportunity came along, then this book wouldn't have happened. But yeah, I mean, those friends I met early on, they really, didn't realize I'd be relying on them for many, many years to come.
Nida, can you please explain something to me? The book feels like there's a thread and a theme to it. Does that come from picking poems that have this thread and theme? Or do you always write with this theme? You know what I mean? It's like, how does a compilation like this happen?
That's a really good question, because I think when I was younger, I thought that it could be that I chose a theme and I would write all poems having to do with that theme. But actually, that's just not how it works in terms of what visits you and what feeling comes to you. And I think that, I mean, I wrote them all over for 25 years. Those poems I had been working on some of those for a very long time. The one about the doldrums, I mean, that started off about a wandering albatross. And I know I started that sometime in Shanghai, and that was in 2002. And I think that, I needed that time to spend time with all the poems and to have the life experiences and to find out whatever it was my theme turned out to be, which is childhood and memory and nature, sort of as a mediator for memory, and sort of a search for, I think, well, I mean, I spend as because you travel as well, we spend a lot of time in these liminal spaces, you know. It's never like the destination, really. It's always, you're waiting, you're waiting to wake up. You're in a train, you're on the way somewhere. And I spend so much time being on the way to another place, country, or even errand. And I think there's these moments that strike you where you're almost outside yourself, and it makes you both question what it is you're doing there, but also understand that this is the fleetingness of life or what have you. And then it's interesting to see where that takes you in terms of what it awakens. I mean, sometimes, for me, it was the natural world coming in. When I lived in Burma, it was just the elements coming into the house and reminding you of what you tried to maybe not pay attention to because you didn't want to look at it. And then it just came back.
Nida, before we start talking about mom, I shyly asked you, but you said yes, and I'm so excited to read one or two of the poems to me, because I've spent so much time with them now. And again, I'm not a big poetry reader, and at one point I so wished I could hear them in your voice and your rhythm and the way you interpret them. Yeah. So that would be a big treat for me and for my my neighbors. Hello, my neighbors. I call my listeners, I call them my guests, my neighbors, my friends, my listeners.
Well, after these conversations, they would be your friends, sisters, and neighbors. But yes, I would be honored to read one. Let's do, you wanted Starling?
I wanted Starling because I just loved it.
Okay, Starling. In the kitchen, the blue flame ignites under a kettle. Out the window, a starling shelters from morning drizzle under fig leaves. Did the moon keep him up too? Did it draw him in as it drew water back to the shore to re-wet and press into the marks it had known before? While in bed sleepless, I waited again for the feature to begin, begged for the waiting to end, but in nearing, forgot why I wanted morning to come. I reach for the spoon when the starling wings his acid-specked mantle to another room. Now the space where it had clung bounces as in the moment after meeting oblivion. I stir the milk into tea and am folded back into the succession of mornings such as these, when I am delivered by a bird, free to be haunted and free to leave.
Oh, it's even more beautiful.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much.
So much.
Thank you.
Can you tell me a little bit about it for those who do not read poetry?
Yes.
What is happening here?
Oh, well, the starling is a bird, and I think these are European starlings. Maybe, probably, there's a time of year when you see a bunch of starlings in the yard, and they come to my fig tree that's outside. It's in the kitchen window, and so I actually don't sleep very well. I've had insomnia for a while, since I was a teenager, and so there's this moment when it's just like, you go to bed and it's a bit of a dread because you're like, wow, what time am I going to wake up? And so when you are awake and you're tossing and turning, you start thinking. And I think I read a lot of Louise Bourgeois, some of her writings, the artist, her writings, and she talked about how insomnia is the too much memory disease. And I find that to be true because, you start remembering too many things that aren't, particularly helpful that time of night. And you just want to go to bed and you're exhausted, but then you're just like, and then when the light, that lunar light that comes up in the morning and it's you're just like, why did I want this to come? It was just, I'm dying here. It's just so bright. Or it's not just so bright, but it's, you dread the day at that point. So it's sort of about waking up like that in just sort of this fog and having experienced this crazy. There's also a scene in there where it's about it's sort of you're waiting for the feature to begin, almost like you're waiting in a movie theater, waiting for something to happen, waiting for trajectory to happen, but you're not because you're in bed and you're tossing and thinking about the same things over and over again. And that's based on a dream I had actually, where I was in a movie theater and I was waiting for the movie to begin. And I looked around and I was in every single seat and we were all waiting and it was all on similar nights where I hadn't slept. And so it was this sort of just this waiting and this kind of dread, but this waiting. So anyway, I was, yeah, it's a typical morning where you have one of those things. And then there's this moment where you look and the bird is so close and just after the rain and I don't know, there was something that was a deliverance there. And when it leaves, it's sort of like this lifting, this letting go. And you can either move on or you can choose to unpack something with a little more fluidity in your day. You're not as obsessed for whatever reason that it took you out of yourself. And I really do feel that about animals. They're either there to, I don't know, speak to you or communicate with, or they bring something. I was really grateful for that day.
It really deeply touched me. I sleep.
I'm jealous. It must be nice.
Oh, it's incredible. I inherited this from my mom. And for me, 9 hours, like nonstop, is like a normal. It's a normal. I can do more.
A dream.
And the more stressed I am, the better I sleep. This is the weird thing that I inherited from my mom. Maybe some kind of weird escapism of where when it's stressful, I'm like, and bye-bye. But
no, it's amazing.
When Kai was little and the sleepless nights of nursing, these were the only times that I experienced this. You were talking about liminal places, and when you're not sleeping and night is turning into day, you find yourself in this liminal place and this blue fire and this quiet moment, and being this liminal place makes you so present in the moment. It made me feel this very, very deeply, this very intimate, deep moment where you're so connected to everything because you haven't slept, and it's just beautiful. I was deeply touched by that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. I love having it explained back to me in a way that was like pretty eloquent.
Let's talk about Mom.
Okay, let's talk about
You have to help me with her name. I wrote it down as Kobkua.
Kobkua, yeah.
Kobkua.
But you can
So,
in America, her nickname was Kobe.
Oh, cute.
Kobe. Yeah, it was cute.
Tell me about her.
Well, she grew up in Thailand. She was the daughter of an architect, a government architect. So she, I think, had some status when she was growing up. Her mom was she was quite strict and rigid, as I learned, and they traveled from different villages. My grandfather was a city planner, and he traveled around Thailand to build buildings and plan cities for the government. And I think that shaped her a lot. I think she grew up with that kind of status, and my grandmother as well. She had she had been a handmaiden of the court. And so she had a little bit of this sort of, I don't know, I think it's too strong to say. I don't think they were aristocratic, but they had some status, And I think she was proud of that, and she was proud of being Thai. But she met my father in the 60s, early 60s.
Sorry to interrupt you. Did she have brothers and sisters?
She did have a brother,
Mm-hmm.
and he was younger. She had an older brother who died early.
Mm.
And they settled in Thailand. They're from the north. Her family is from the north. At least my grandmother's family is from the north. She was born somewhere along the way in their travels and their posts. But she grew up in Bangkok. I mean, in her 20s, in her teens and 20s. And in college, she met my father, who went to the rival college, the university, and they came to America in the late 60s, like 67. And my father started in New York. And then when he was in in Philadelphia, she joined him in 67. And it was a wild time. It was, the race riots were happening at the time. I think first Martin Luther King had been assassinated, and then RFK, or it's not RFK, Robert Kennedy had been shot, and then there was just chaos. But also, it was the '60s in America, and I think they really loved being in America.
Did you speak English already then, or how was the
She
transition for her?
did. She
Okay.
did. She spoke some English because actually both my parents had worked. My mother as a translator to the U.S. Army during
Okay.
when it was the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
And she had worked for them because they were based, the U.S. Army, the government had come to Thailand during that time. And both of them were sponsored by the U.S. government to come to America. And that was sort of during the lifting of the the Exclusion Act,
Mm-hmm.
that had been previously enacted before. But yeah, so they were part of this big wave of Asians that came, and they started in Philly. And then towards the 70s, they moved to Atlanta because they knew other Thai people who had come, and it was more affordable, and there was, you know, this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And then she had you. Do you have brothers and sisters?
I do not. It's just me. I'm an only child.
Did she work in America as well, or did?
She did.
Yeah.
She did. She had a job working at New York Life Insurance Company in Philadelphia. And then I think moved on to work at the offices in Atlanta. And then my dad started his own company. And then so she worked for him doing secretarial work and this kind of thing. But she was mostly working there, but also, doing all the cooking. And I think I mean, honestly, I knew her more as an astrologer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was an astrologer. People came to her to have readings, and also to, yeah, to have readings. Like they paid her, or to ask her when they should have a C-section for their babies to be
Yeah, yeah,
born,
yeah.
and this kind of thing.
Okay, exciting. Yeah, interesting. What did her later years look like? Did they stay
Mm.
married? Did she?
They did. They did stay married. They had some challenge. I mean, they were different people, and my mom was, she, I think she is by nature independent, but she didn't learn to drive in America, and
Mm,
that is really,
that's debilitating.
I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah,
debilitating,
it
especially in
is.
America. I
Yeah,
mean, if you were to
yeah,
define some things
yeah.
about Americans in America, it's that you'd have to have a car, and
Mm,
it sort of symbolizes America in
mm-hmm.
a way.
Yeah.
So she didn't have a car, or sorry, she didn't drive in America, and though she had driven in Thailand, which is really
Oh,
strange.
interesting. Okay.
And I think she had a lot of, there were fears about things. There were things that were hinted at that happened maybe in Philadelphia that were, I don't know if she was, maybe attacked at some point, or, experienced just kind of like the hardships of being in America sometimes, like racism or just the toughness of city living.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there was a lot of fear informing some of the decisions. So she didn't want to drive. And then taking that away, there's a lot of less independence. So I think she also relied on astrology for that, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because some need to control her fate. It wasn't, you couldn't be, the agency wasn't through proactive things or
Yeah.
acts. It was more through sort of this other space. And then when they retired, they were going to split their time between Thailand and America. But at some point in Thailand, she was diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
And that was, wow, when was that? That was about 15, 14 years ago. And then at that point, they stayed mostly in Thailand because there was better help. And yeah, and it was easier for her there,
Mm-hmm.
though she missed America a lot.
Yeah. And you haven't seen her. You've been far away then.
Yes, at that time I was traveling, living in different countries, and I would visit, but not as often as when I was in Burma. I got to visit her more often there. But the decline was slow and pretty painful, I think, psychologically and physically.
I remember you told me when we met, when 2023
Yeah.
in the summer, and then she
Mhm.
passed away that
Later
fall.
that fall, yes, yes. She passed away, and it was hard towards the end. She couldn't quite speak anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and her body had been through a lot. So
I'm very grateful I did not go through this with my mom.
yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah,
sort of,
yeah.
it's hard.
It was a surprise.
Hmm.
As it happened as a surprise, but I'm grateful. It must be
Yeah,
devastating to watch your parent like
yeah.
that.
It
Yeah,
was it was a lot of. It was sad. It was sad. It was
yeah,
really sad.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Let's learn from her.
yeah.
You said you had a challenging relationship with her. So
Did yeah. I really I really respected her so much, and I really, for both of my parents, I really wanted to know them, and I wanted to understand them, and I wanted them to understand me. I think that longing is always there, and I think a lot of that shaped my writing. But I think I just wanted to know them, but I think they resisted it. I mean, I think not because they were like, you'll never know me, but I think it's because they were busy
mm,
assimilating to America at the same time. They had their own motivations for whatever it is they wanted to do in life. And I think that focus kept them from us seeing each other, maybe. I
mm-hmm,
think that.
mm-hmm.
And I was growing up in America, and it's so different, and they only knew Thailand, and I think that's the only reference they could make.
Yeah,
And it was
yeah,
like, this is what you do. You go to school, you do your best, and you do these things. And I think because, I mean, my dad was less afraid than my mom, but I think she was really rigid about the formula. This is
yeah.
what equals this. And
Because it protects you. Because that's
exactly,
some kind of a certainty and then some kind of a structure, and you believe that as long as you're in this structure, you're safe and you're doing the right thing.
exactly, exactly.
Nita, is it part of culture generally that this a little distance between not being so open in generation wise as America is and some European countries? Is it also partially the culture?
It is. I mean, I think it's the majority of the culture. It's probably when they were raised. I mean, they were born in the 40s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my mom remembers like the Japanese in one of the towns. So it's the culture, it's the experience of
Yes.
immigration,
Yeah.
and it's having, like you said, you cling to what you know because it's safe. You have a cultural community around you that would enforce that kind of dynamic. And yeah, it's not unusual to have that the strictness of the parents, the focus on education. I do think now that I've lived a while and asked other people, other Asians and other minorities and immigrant kids, I'm like, was your mom like this? And they're like, yeah, but yours is like, pretty intense. Yeah.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
know that it was
Hmm.
at least, I know that was she would, and she would laugh too, because I think she knew she was a tiger.
Hmm. It's so interesting. I told you I have boxes of my mom's things now that I brought them from Zagreb to Vienna to go through them, the last boxes. And I have a box of photographs. And I didn't even come close, but I started going through them. And I found a photograph, underwater photograph. I remember I bought an underwater photo camera. And this is a photograph of my mom underwater with my best friend's mom from the
Oh,
island where we spend our summers. So I took a photo of this and sent it to my best friend. And she
wow.
was so shocked. And she said, I've never seen my mom like this. And that's, I think, what we are talking
Yeah.
about. Obviously, her mom kept a very strict, like, she had a different role in front of her daughter. And
Yes.
then she was this playful, she would
Yes.
allow this playful side somewhere else. Now we can go into analysis why that is so, but this is very, very interesting that
It's,
parents only allow some parents, I don't know if all parents, maybe we do that too in another way, but we allow only a certain thing, our
yes.
children to see only a certain thing.
That's such a similar experience to when I looked at pictures of my mom.
Mm,
And she was so chic and she was a different person,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
loved seeing that. And in fact, at her funeral, her classmates came by, and I really loved this because again, your relationship with your mother is one thing, but then to hear them tell me about what she was like in college and that they admired her and that
yeah,
she was like the top girl and that they, like she was just this so alive and a
yeah.
person that I don't know, like I would have loved to have met
Met
her.
her. Yeah, I know.
I think
Yeah.
I would have been wowed, awed, and not afraid, or
Mm,
maybe a little afraid, but also like because, she was kind of cool. And my parents did seem kind of like in the pictures, they seemed like kind of cool hipsters in the 60s, but like, I only knew them as like, you know,
yeah,
grumpy 40-year-olds.
interesting. This is why when Kai tells me, Mama, sometimes you are so childish, I take that as a big compliment. I'm
Oh,
like,
yes.
yes, Kai, I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah. You're welcome.
You're welcome. Yeah, exactly. Nita, let's learn from her. What do you feel are most
Mhm.
important things you've learned from her?
Well, like just on all earnest honesty, like cooking and food, the importance of food. It was the only, I can honestly say it was one of the only times that regularly, like and this is not unusual for Asians either, but where it's like a convention, like it feels like conventional love because a conventional showing of love, like the generosity of eating together and cooking for one another. And her just, I mean, she was very good with her hands. So
Hmm.
everything, she was really talented at sewing and also cooking, anything handmade, she was really good at. And, but the food, like I wouldn't skip dinner at my house. Like, other kids would be like, yeah, I didn't go to dinner at my house. I'll be like, no, I'm not skipping dinner. I'll meet you at the movies after I eat dinner.
Hmm.
And yeah, just an appreciation for that vehicle for showing respect and care and love and nurturing. Like that's how she nurtured. So I really appreciate that. And I take that with me.
Do you do that as well?
Yeah, I cook. I mean, I'm not as good of a cook because I was used to her cooking for me. And then
Yeah, I know.
and then when she couldn't do it anymore, I felt really sorry for myself. I was like,
Hmm.
what? But yeah, I also like to cook and she gave me some of her recipes and stuff. And I mean, now it's a part of something I can share with my son. And
Yep.
we like food and we like, the adventure of it and the flavors. And I don't know, it's just really a part of the culture too. Like you've been to Thailand, right?
I haven't.
What? Yeah. Well,
I have to go to Thailand.
yes, you do.
My high school boyfriend here in Vienna was from Thailand,
Oh my
and
gosh.
he was just the cutest boy.
Well, we could look him up.
Yeah. Oh,
See if they-
yeah.
That's another podcast.
That's a different podcast. Anyway, let's go back to
Yes.
mom.
Yes, mom.
Do we have other lessons?
She, I gotta say, like mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
She, I think my dad was really, he, if anything, walked the path more of the Buddhist.
Mm-hmm.
So he gave me Buddhism, but I feel like even while my mom was Buddhist, she was more of a mystic than anything else. Like we would visit shamans and mediums and witch doctors, essentially
Oh,
fortune
wow.
tellers. Like we would, yeah, she would take me to them or they would come to our house. And I think it was her form of imagination. I think it was for somebody who maybe felt limited in her ability to change her life. Maybe that was her way of invoking imagination, like, because she could imagine disaster, but she could also imagine something coming to intercede on her behalf or something, greater than what she saw before her. And so she believed in all that. And I am sort of interested in that. I'm interested in the ways in which we're connected to something maybe greater than our own, objective, scientific, physical ability to do
Mm-hmm.
something. I think that you have to give up maybe some of your will at some point if something's not going exactly. I mean, it can be taken to a certain extent, but I mean, I just like the letting go of that. I like letting go of these sort of regimented or conservative or conventional ideas of what's morally acceptable to rely on as a guiding force. It's also like magic.
It is
Like,
magic. But, I think an important part of that for me is trust.
yeah.
Because when you believe in this other dimension,
Mhm.
whatever you call it or however you see it,
Mhm.
when you know there's something bigger than us, than something we maybe not do not understand, then it's
Mhm.
easier to let go and trust and be like, there's something else going on that I can't, I'm too small to understand.
Mhm.
And I think this gives a very nice, comforting way
Yes.
of being, of
Yeah.
trusting.
Yeah. And just like also accepting you're small. You're
Yes.
you're
Yeah.
humble. It humbles you
Yes.
because you're like, look, I can't do anything. Like, help me out. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
that's a beautiful one.
oh, thank
Um,
you.
Tell me about your writing voice.
Oh, yes. So yeah, I think I mentioned it. I didn't really realize it until I started reading over the poems and maybe whenever I'm trying to invoke a certain emotion or a certain level of suspense or tension, I think it's based on or coming from this either my mother sometimes, just the feeling of either having to approach her to say something or the feeling of mystery maybe when I was well I said before that I think a lot of it has to do with longing, like wanting to understand them
Hmm.
and them being kind of a mystery to me. And then at the same time, I guess the writing is wanting them to understand me, but I can't say it straightforwardly because if I could, then I would just say it straightforwardly,
Yeah.
right? But there's
Yeah.
fear, and then there's also it's not just straightforward enough to. I mean, it's not exactly right to say that. For example, I felt this way. That feeling is never like that. You know what I mean? It's not simple like that. It's got to be captured in a space somehow. And so I spend a lot of time trying to build that space.
Hmm.
But when entering that space for the reader, I very much value what I feel is a mysterious experience, sort of one that is a bit seductive, but also a little bit dreadful, but also like it has hopefully the promise, but it won't. I mean, reconciliation is too much, but some kind of promise that if you go a little further, maybe there would be some kind of redemption or reconciliation. I mean, that is what I hope for myself every time, but you don't always get it. And I think that that it really grew out of this feeling of wanting something, that closeness and intimacy with my parents that I just rarely got.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Thank
How beautiful that no, but really, you know, that this lack in this relationship birthed your artistic and creative persona. I mean, that inability to communicate created Nida the poetress. That's
Well, thank you. I mean, I don't, and it's like, you don't really, I always wanted to decide myself. I'm like, this is the way I'm going to sound.
Yeah.
But it never came out like, it didn't sound convincing. And it wasn't, I think that's for a long time why I didn't write, because actually what we studied in school were people who don't communicate that way. They're usually older white men who they're very stoic. They don't usually talk about feelings. They don't usually, we all grew up on the same classic white writers, and a few women. I tried to write like that, and it wasn't convincing at all. Like it wasn't.
It's not you.
Yeah. And so, but that felt a little bit disappointing to me because it felt a little bit like a failure or being locked outside of something that I couldn't have a piece of because I just couldn't make one thing apply to another. And then I think one of the things that after, when you have a child, you don't care about what people think as much.
Yeah.
And I think that it became very urgent for me and compulsive for me to write in this way. That was you could accept it or not. I mean, and it didn't get accepted in the beginning. You have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of the time, I just for a really long time, I just didn't understand. Like, why did I do all this school? Why did I learn this way if I wasn't going to do this? Like, what if, and then I just had to live and process, I guess, a lot of life and sort of realize. And again, like, I didn't decide the way that, I mean, there's so many people, if I could choose to write like them, I would write like them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't choose to write like this. And it just happened because of all the revisiting, everything all the visiting, all the thinking in your mind and revisiting of that, the stroking of the stone, almost like this is how you're shaped because you just kept on going back to that. And then it had to come out this way. It was truly a compulsive thing.
It's beautiful. That's who you are. You are who you are, Nida.
Thank you.
Let's go to the last lesson. And then I'm very curious for you to explain this to me. You send it to me and I'm like, I want to hear more about this.
Yeah, I think I said I learned about what belongs to you. I think it starts with when my parents died, when my father and when my mom died. My father died 7 years ago. My mom died 2 years ago. But I think when they died, it started to clarify the things that actually belong to you. What is it that you take with you or have with you, and what is borrowed? And, for my dad, I really felt like he wasn't mine after all. Like I was very close with him. And when he left or when he died, I was just like really, really like childlike, I think, in terms of, that was mine. He was mine and he wasn't. And then with my mom, I feel like she was very much slowly taken. And it was really tough to watch and care for because she wasn't herself, because she was sick as well, and almost resisting care and resisting people who wanted to take care of her. When they passed away, I realized that there were things they're all borrowed. You know, like your body is borrowed. And the people in your life you only have for a little bit. And, you know, materially, you also, those things that, you know, that you get sentimental about, those are quite temporal. And so I think it's, it, I mean, it's just a question that I ask myself, like, what really belongs to you? And like, what is it that you get to have to call your own? You know, I wonder, you know, it's wrapped up a little bit, I think, in trying to find a home a little bit because, you know, I travel so much and where do you take refuge, I guess, is where, like, if it's not your parents, if it's not your physical house, in the end, because it can,
Where is home?
yeah, where is it? And I think I'm looking for that. And I think that they, as immigrants who actually went back home, but weren't entirely satisfied with what that was like either. I think we're all in a way just trying to find a place to rest. And I think that it's not to do with, you know, obviously not the accumulation of things, but, you know, what is it that you have? And really it's just your experiences with those material, like with that person. Like I have the things that only the times with my parents gave me. And so um I have I have those experiences, I guess, the things that they taught me or that I learned despite them not teaching me.
But this is very interesting because this is my last question.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
What
Yeah.
is
Okay.
what do you wish she had, what did you learn that's important that she didn't teach you? What do you wish she had taught you?
You know, you kind of mentioned it, but I wish she had taught me to trust myself a little more. You know, I think she really, I mean, she loved me. I think she really wanted me to be safe. I think she wanted me to be protected. But I think it also manifested in this sort of this fear, all-consuming fear that I would get hurt or that I would, you know, when she would read my horoscope, she would just be like, be careful because this is going to happen, you know, be careful, like here and here, and you're going to get hurt. You're going to get hurt doing this. You could, you know, if you ride in a car, you have to be careful and blah, blah, blah. And so, and she did it out of love and she did it out of, you know, she wanted me to be okay. But it just made me partially because I'm also maybe prone to being fearful, but also it just made me not trust that I, with my experience, could handle it. You know, and I think that that is the one thing that I wish she had. I mean, nobody's a coach. They like coaching, a life coach or any of these. Yeah, nobody's coaching at that time period, right? So, yeah, like she did. I would have loved to have heard, "I trust you can do this. You can. I can. Yeah, you can. I trust you. You can. You have all this experience now, and you can do this. And you can. And if you can't, in that moment, you can ask for help. You know, and if you know, strategies and things like this. And but trusting myself would have been great.
Nida, this was so beautiful.
Thank you so much,
I am
Anna.
so glad we did this finally.
Me
it was 2
too.
years in the cooking,
I
in the making.
know. I know. It did take a while, but I'm glad we did it now instead of earlier. I wouldn't have been ready.
I know. This is it. Everything happens in the right time.
Yes.
Let me recap quickly lessons we learned from Kobkua. I got it.
Yes.
Cooking, how to cook, but more than that, showing love and nurture through food and sitting down to share this food with people we love. Mysticism. Here we were talking about something greater than us, and this trust. There is something greater, and that we are connected. Allowing yourself to be connected to that other dimension, or however you want to call it. I love it that she gave you said my writing voice, and that is beautiful. And at the end, we spoke about what truly belongs to you, and here you covered the topics of home and this safe place, I was thinking of identity a little bit while you were talking as well,
Yeah.
through that. And then finally, something you wish she had taught you is to trust yourself more, and just to instill you this feeling that you can do this.
Yes.
This is so important.
Yeah.
Did I forget something? Did I miss anything?
No, you've got it. And the bit about identity, and I think that is, what is it that belongs to you? Yeah, what doesn't change? And then I guess also, like, can you live with other people like that? Like, will
Mm-hmm.
people let you live somewhere as yourself? Will
Mm.
they accept you? And if they don't, then do you accept, how can you live? Can you live with that and work around that? Or do you have to leave? Do you have to go somewhere else?
Mm. Beautiful themes, deep and inspiring. Thank you again, Nida.
Thank you so much, Anna.
If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyouMama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Tider, that's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.